Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is time once again for the Wagon Sports podcast. Still down to only two members, but we traded him this week. We got Slade back from his vacation slash working schedule, and Nick goes on vacation this week. So I mean, must be nice. You guys just always going on vacation. Um, but no, we're glad to have Slade back. Hope Nick is enjoying his time at the beach and hasn't jumped off that second floor balcony just yet. Had a action-packed weekend all across sports this past weekend. NASCAR had their playoff race at Kansas. IndyCar wrapped up their season. We had week one of the NFL. We had week two of college football, and we have lots of storylines to go along with all of it. So let's get right into it, and we're going to throw it over to NASCAR, where Bubba Wallace wins his second career race. You could argue his first straight up race, as his first race win at Talladega was a rain shortened race. But nonetheless, he put a lot of doubters to bed this past weekend. A lot of people argued that he just wasn't able to get anything done on the racetrack. He it was his luck, it was his skill, whatever you want to say about it. But he goes out there, he becomes the second consecutive non-playoff driver to win a playoff race behind Eric Jones last weekend at Darlington. Slade, just your thoughts on the race real quick, and Bubba Wallace picking up his second career win.
Yeah, so I first off, I just think it's crazy that he was able to switch cars and basically win right away, right? This is his second race
Mhm.
in the car. Um, I think it would have been interesting to see had Kurt Busch been healthy enough to come back. I mean, this would have put him into the second round as an automatic uh win. So it's a lot. I am really just based on this past weekend, really worried about the Fords and if they're even going to have a chance with the rest of this season. I mean, they've just had a
Yeah,
rough go at it. I mean, they're coming to Bristol this weekend. I think that, I mean, what they raced in the dirt earlier this season, and it was Tyler Reddick and I think Chase Briscoe that were involved in an accident, like right at the last lap there, and Kyle Busch ended up getting the win. But I think Chase Briscoe was like one of the only Fords running in the top five throughout that part of the race. So it'll
yeah.
be obviously that was with dirt, but it just seems like the Fords the Chevys and the Toyotas have really been able to move quick with the new cars that they're working with this year, and Ford is just not able to catch up.
Yeah, the highest finishing for this past week was Ryan Blaney in ninth place. But yeah, I totally agree with you. And we've noticed that the whole year where it's been the Chevys and Toyotas lapping Fords left and right. Ford started to come on there kind of towards the end of the regular season. Harvick picked up his two wins. You had Cindric battling for wins. Blaney was battling for wins. Like it looked like
Phenomenal.
Ford, yeah, had finally turned the corner. It was heading in the right direction. And now all of a sudden we get to the playoffs, and I don't know, Chevy and Toyota just, had that much data from the first couple races here, or just had these upgrades and stocked up, ready to go. But yeah, Ford is really struggling. We take a look here at the playoff points real quick. Heading into the cutoff race at Daytona, uh, I did not have Harvick being one of the first four out, but two DNFs back to back. Some rotten luck at Darlington, and especially last week as well, has him in danger. But we're heading to a track where he has an average finish of 8.9 in his last 11 races on regular Bristol, not dirt Bristol. Um, and we saw last year that he almost won the race. He got caught up with Chase Elliott late. Kyle Larson's able to get by him. So it's definitely a track that he knows how to win. He knows how to win in pressure situations. So he's not out by any means, but it's absolutely a winner go home scenario for him. We look at the rest of the guys. Kyle Busch, 2 points below the cutoff line. Again, he loves Bristol. I think he'll be okay. He should get a really strong finish here. Austin Dillon, 3 points back. Chase Briscoe, 9 points back. So Slade, looking at the point standings heading into the final round of 16, who are your four going home?
Yeah, so I think that it looks pretty up and up. I think that Kyle Busch, we saw the good news. He signed with RCR for this upcoming season. I think that that's going to take a lot of pressure off him. He's not going to have to hear as many questions. I mean, the guy's showing up to the track and everyone's just like, "Oh, we heard you're going to this team. Oh, we heard they're going to this team. Like, what's going on?" He's like, "I have not even talked to these teams. I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah,
Um, I think that I think that we're gonna see Suarez or Chastain. I think one of those 2, it's looking like just based on their points now, I think Suarez would be the one that would drop down. I think Kyle Busch is gonna get a good finish this upcoming weekend at Bristol, being the winner earlier in the season. Obviously, it was on a different surface, but, um, Yeah, so I think the bottom 3 kinda stay the same, and then I think that, Kyle Busch is able to switch it out with Bush Suarez or even Austin Cindric just because, like I said, the Fords are just having a rough time right now.
Yeah. Um,
And that would be all 3 of the Fords that made it into the playoffs if Cindric falls out.
no, you still got Logano and Blaney up there.
Oh, yeah, 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 sorry, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Um, but I think Reddick, if Reddick can hang on this week and stay in the points, he's absolutely a threat going forward. We're going to Charlotte here in a few weeks, which he has proven he's done really well in the road courses this year, especially the weird layout ones like Indy, where he won earlier this year. Um, and so if he can survive this week, he's absolutely a threat to make it to the round of eight. Um, yeah, again, Harvick is in a win or go home situation. We'll have to see what kind of car Rodney brings for him. I think Briscoe and Dillon are out. I've said that from the beginning of the playoffs. Briscoe, ever since he won at Phoenix and he, like we just talked about, he had that run in with Reddick at Bristol Dirt. He hasn't been consistent all year, hasn't had great finishes. I understand this is rookie year. I'm not trying to harp on him. I just don't think he has enough right now to push himself further into the playoffs. Um, I think Bush does get back in, like you said, there's a lot of pressure off of him. Um, but not only that, like he's just been having a lot of fun in the race car here lately. And again, I think Bristol is one of his best tracks. So I see him getting back up into the top 12 here. Uh, I would agree with you that yes, Cindric or Suarez are probably the one of the two there that is going to get knocked down. Suarez just has to run a decent race and stay out of trouble. The problem is trouble has been finding him here lately. Um, through none of his own fault really, but and that's what Bristol turns into. That's what makes it such an exciting race to have as a cutoff race. Is there's two lap cars racing in front of you, and they could just take each other out. We can have a situation last year like Kevin Harvick pissing off Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott just comes out and holds him up and lets his teammate go on to get the win. Um, so there's definitely a lot of drama that's going to unfold this weekend, but I would say Chastain on up unless something serious happens. Granted, none of these guys are essentially locked in, but unless Christopher Bell gets taken out lap one and Kevin Harvick goes on the win, he's not going to get knocked out. So um, yeah, really we're looking at 10 down to 16 there is in danger. So yeah, I would probably put Reddick before I put Suarez, just because, or excuse me, Cindric before I put Suarez. I think Cindric has shown a lot of speeds or shown a lot of speed at the super speedway. Uh, Short tracks, I really just haven't seen enough out of him for me to be like, yeah, okay, I think he'll be safe at Bristol this week. So I'm going to go with Harvick, Briscoe, Dillon, and Cindric as my first four out. Um, Moving on, the NASCAR schedule was just released. Actually, right before we hopped on here, so we're going to talk about that here real quick. So this is your 2023 NASCAR schedule. They go back to the LA Coliseum for the Clash at the Coliseum again, like they did this year. That'll be Sunday, February 5th, a week before the Super Bowl. Um, the Duel at Daytona will be Thursday, February 16th, and the 500 will follow it up that Sunday on the 19th. Then we head to Auto Club Speedway. Uh, I mean, I really wish it wasn't the short track. But we talked about that before. Then we head to Las Vegas, and then Phoenix. Come back to Atlanta, go to Coda, Richmond, which I am really surprised Richmond had two dates. There was a lot of talk about Richmond possibly losing one of their dates next year. Uh, I think that'll be almost a given in 2024 that Richmond loses a date, especially with the TV contract coming up. Um, then we go to Bristol Dirt, Martinsville on the Sunday race. A little surprising that they're not doing a night race at Martinsville this year. It will be Sunday races both times. Um, Dover on April 30th, Kansas, Darlington, and then this was announced last week, but I'm super excited for it. North Wilkesboro gets put back on the schedule, and it'll be the All Star race. They will not be tearing down the track surface this year and running dirt races this fall like they had originally planned. I'm kind of sad to see go. I was really hoping to see those, but hey, North Wilkesboro gets a NASCAR date, and it will be an all-star race. I'm super excited for that. I'll have to see how much tickets are and see if that's a possibility. Um, Coke 600 on Memorial Day weekend. Gateway is going to be on June 4th. Sonoma June 11th. Then they have a bye week, and then this is where I'm presuming NBC will pick up the coverage like they normally do. We're going to Nashville June 25th. The Chicago Street Race July 2nd. Again, your thoughts about that. Um, Atlanta, July 9th. New Hampshire, July 16th, Pocono, July 23rd, Richmond for their second date, July 30th. I feel like it's really far up on the schedule.
Mhm.
Um, Michigan, August 6th, the Indy Road Course, August 13th, Watkins Glen, August 20th. So that's interesting there to see two road courses back to back towards the end of the season there. And then the regular season cutoff race at Daytona on August 26th. Darlington kicks off the playoffs on September 3rd, Labor Day weekend again. Kansas, Bristol, that stays the same. Texas, Talladega, Charlotte, that stays the same as this year. Las Vegas, Homestead, and Martinsville, again, the same as this year. And the championship race will come at Phoenix once again on November 5th. So, Slade, just real quick before we move on to the NFL, your thoughts on um, the schedule here?
Yeah, so I think the biggest surprising thing to me is that they're gonna go ahead and do the Clash at the Coliseum again. Um, just personally watching it last year, it looked like they got a decent amount of, like, people from the area. They brought in Pitbull, they brought in, who was it, like, Ice Cube or something like that, that
Mhm.
also sang. It just didn't seem like they really packed the place, though. Um I'm just they must have had really great TV ratings for it. I mean, I liked the race and everything, but to take all that time to put a track down and then tear it up because USC is playing on that field right now, right?
Yeah.
And then, to then put it all back down again next year. I mean, they must have had really good margins off of that, like, marquee event last year, this year, to be able
Yeah.
to do it again.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really cool event to watch. I personally didn't think they were I think they announced this a little while ago, though, that they were gonna go back.
Mhm.
I didn't think they were going to do it 2 years in a row just because, like you said, of how much effort went into it. Um, I'm thinking this year they're gonna promote it a little bit better, and they're gonna try and, get those stands even more filled. Um, but I don't see this as being a thing that happens year in, year out going forward from here, just 'cause I feel like it's way too much work. USC is turning their program around. They're probably not gonna like people driving or turning into a road course. You have the Olympics coming up in a few years. You're probably gonna need to keep the field in certain condition for that and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how long this continues, and we shall wait and see.
Or
Uh,
maybe that's the reasoning as to why that you bring up a good point about the Olympics. Um, a lot of money is given to the country that is perm performing the Olympics, you know? So maybe their plans are to just do whatever with the field over the next couple years, and then they're just gonna, completely redo the field portion of it prior to the Olympics. I don't know.
yeah, we'll have to wait and
It
see on
definitely
that.
seems like a ton of work.
Yeah, absolutely. But my big takeaways, like I said, I'm super excited for the North Wilkesboro race. That's gonna be a lot of
Mhm.
fun. And then to me, the biggest change is Indy, Watkins Glen, and Daytona in 3 consecutive weeks. Um, that's just gonna ratchet up the pressure heading into the playoffs that much more. They're definitely going for the shock factor heading into the playoffs. You want a lot of surprise winners at the end of the year. So I am super excited for that, and we
Do
shall
you
wait and see.
think do you think that we see Jimmy Johnson at, North Wilkesboro for the All-Star race? He stated that he would love to run there and that his sponsor in Indy, Carvana, has
Mhm.
told them that they will or has told him that they'll sponsor him in any endeavor he does.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could see that happening. I don't know how strict they're gonna be about trying to get him into the All-Star race. Yeah, he's won it in the past,
It
but
would
as
be his 10th year, it's his last year of eligibility.
yeah, so I mean, yeah, he's a winner in the past, so he fits the criteria to get in, but I don't know how strict they're gonna be on, "Hey, you're not a full-time driver, it's you shouldn't really be in here." We'll have to wait and see on
Mhm.
that. I think he definitely runs at least a few NASCAR races next year. His name's been thrown around that Project 91 car a lot. I don't think he's gonna run that car. We'll have to wait and see. It is a Chevy car. Um, I
Even
think
Xfinity.
yeah, um, I think Hendrick just picks up an extra lease for next year or releases a charter to get him into a few races or just, satellite team. And he has to qualify into a few races. I can definitely see him running next year, but we'll have to wait and see. But moving on, it is time to shift gears into the NFL and review week one. Um, I thought it was a great week. We had a lot of exciting games. A lot of games go down to the final minutes. A few overtime games. We had a tie because the Texans are the Texans. Um, but let's look at some of the scores here from the games we picked last week. So first up, the Bills just throttled the Rams on Thursday Night Football to open the season. Um, Bills go up 31-10. I thought this game was going to be a lot closer. The Rams just could not move the ball at all, and that's concerning going forward. There was a lot of talk of people upset, especially fantasy owners. Allen Robinson wasn't targeted much at all. Um, let's see, Josh Allen throws 26-31 for 297 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's off to an MVP caliber start. The question is, can he keep up his consistency, which is the issue we've seen in years past. Um, Probably the game of the week, I would say. We had Browns visiting Carolina. They kick a last-second field goal to win 26-24, spoiling Baker's revenge. This was a really good game, back and forth the whole time. I thought Baker looked pretty decent. He goes 16 to 27 for 235 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. I think the Panthers' biggest downfall was their run game. McCaffrey had 10 carries for 33 yards. That's not going to get the job done. They need to bolster up the offensive line a little bit. Um, but having a name like McCaffrey in the backfield, and he's healthy now, so you need to use him while you can. To only get 33 yards
For sure.
is concerning. Um, I think the surprise of the week came with the Vikings winning at home 23-7. I don't think it was a surprise the Vikings won, but I think it was a surprise how bad they won by. Um, but uh, we saw this week one last year. The Packers got blown out by the Saints week one. Aaron Rodgers came out and said, "Oh, just relax." I think it's a little different than last year. Last year, we knew what the Packers had. We knew how good of a team they were. They just came out and got throttled week one. This year, there's a lot of questions at wide receiver. They had big question marks on the offensive line, which I wasn't prepared for. Um, Rodgers goes 22-34 for 195 yards and 1 interception. He was sacked 4 times, and those sacks weren't like gentle, like thrown down. He was getting
He was getting
smashed.
manhandled.
Yeah. Um, so that's concerning to see going forward for that team. I still think they'll be fine. I still see them as a playoff team. Um, I don't think the Vikings are that much better than them. If we saw this matchup in week 10, I think it'd be a lot closer. I don't know what it is with the Packers the last 2 years. They can't get it together week one, but we shall wait and see about that. But Cousins did look really good. He went 23 of 32, 277 yards and 2 touchdowns. Um, he was spreading the ball around really well. Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook had a decent day in the backfield as well. So encouraging signs from Minnesota for this season. Um, Chiefs blow out the Cardinals 44-21. It was a double XP weekend for Call of Duty, so a lot of people kind of saw this coming. Um, but I honestly I thought Kyler Murray looked really really bad and I've said this for a while now. I think Kyler Murray is a good QB. He is a franchise QB. He's not a Super Bowl winning QB. He's not the guy to get you there. I don't think he's mature enough, and that's just not even talking about the Call of Duty stuff. I just think in the game of football itself, I don't think he's ready to be that guy yet. And we kind of saw that. Mahomes had a outstanding day. He goes 30 of 39 for 360 yards and 5 touchdowns. There's a lot of questions coming into this season with him losing Tyreek Hill. Like, hey, yeah, you can spread the ball around, but will your offense still be as good? He answered those questions week one. We'll have to see if they can keep that up throughout the rest of the season. Murray, by the way, went 22 of 34 for 193 yards and 2 touchdowns. Um, Trace McSorley got some playing time. That was cool to see. Uh,
Yeah, let's go.
Moving on, we had the Chargers and the Raiders in a rematch of the final week of last year. Uh, this was a really good game. Chargers pull it out 24-19. Herbert goes 26 to 34 for 279 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was a great fantasy day for me. Derek Carr goes 22 to 37 for 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he also threw 3 picks. He was also sacked 5 times, and 2 of those sacks came on the final drive, and he fumbled the ball both times when he was sacked on that final drive. Um, so definitely big question marks on the offensive line for the Raiders. Um, if Carr can and we have said this so many times in the past, if he could just be consistent, I think the Raiders would be a really good team. Um, the 3 picks killed them. They were having really decent drives. I think 2 of those picks, and he just killed them. Uh, but the Chargers defense is legit, especially that front seven. You got Khalil Mack there, Joey Bosa. That defensive line was wreaking havoc. Their backwards were flying all over the place. Um,
Sorta similar to the Rams-Bills game.
yeah,
'Cause Matthew Stafford threw 3 picks also. I mean, they had,
yeah,
uh, good offense running, he just was destroying their momentum, kinda like you said with the Raiders.
yeah, absolutely. Um, but this Charger defense can definitely be one of the best in the league going forward. We shall wait and see. They have a big matchup this week. The Sunday night game, we had the Buccaneers visiting Dallas, and that was a shit show. Uh, Dak Prescott left the game injured, broke his thumb. He will be out, I think, 6 weeks now. Um, and I don't, I don't think the Cowboys are going to win a game in that 6 weeks he's out. Brady went 18 to 27, 212 yards, one touchdown, one interception. To me, I think the Buccaneers dynasty in the NFC South is going to come to an end this year after watching Week One. Again, it's Week One, and this is probably an overreaction. Um, but I didn't see enough out of that offense for me to be like, okay, yeah, these guys are going to be good. I was pretty concerned for this offense as a whole. I didn't think they were moving the ball all that well. And Brady's one touchdown pass was an absolutely miraculous play by Mike Evans on the outside. Um, so it could be a long year for the Buccaneers, but I think that division as a whole is wide open right now, so they could easily still squeak out a division win. And the Monday night game was the debacle of the weekend. Seahawks win 17-16 because the Broncos don't know how to manage a clock, apparently. Um, Russell Wilson didn't look great. He had the one long touchdown pass to Jerry Judy, but that was it. He goes 29 to 42 for 340 yards in that one touchdown. Geno Smith actually looked really, really good for all the shit he got in the offseason. He goes 23 to 28 for 195 yards and two touchdowns. Um, I don't know if it was week one or what, or just the environment of everybody hating him in Seattle. I guess he thought he was going to be loved, but everybody hated him. Got booed coming out for warmups. I Nick had said it a lot, and I tend to agree with him. I don't think he's the savior. I don't think he's the same quarterback he was when he came into the league and helped Seattle, to that early playoff success. Um, he's still a good QB. He's the best QB they've had since Peyton Manning left. Is he worth all that money? No. Is he going to get them to the playoffs? Maybe not this year, but he will in the future. But again, I don't see him as a Super Bowl caliber quarterback anymore unless they can put enough pieces around him. Um, but Slade, just real quick as I keep rambling here, your thoughts on Week One?
Yeah, so I was really surprised that you didn't put the Bears game in here in the mudslide. Obviously that wasn't one of the games that we had talked about, but I just thought that it was kind of funny to see that that game it came out that like the over under was like 34 and a half or something like that.
Mhm.
And Nick texted us about it and it was like, oh, it's you see people with like snow shovels shoveling water off of the grass field. It's
I
just
I was
ridiculous.
driving home already, and I pulled over at a gas station, and I went in, and I put the last of my FanDuel money on the under for that, and then it was also raining at the Ravens-Jets game, and I was
Yep.
like, I know they're playing on turf, but so I put the under on that, and that one hit too, so I ended my weekend on a high.
Can't beat it.
No.
Yeah, I think like you said, I think Russell Wilson is gonna be able to keep the Broncos better than what they were without him here recently, but I don't see them being a team that is able to make a deep playoff run with him as their quarterback. I think that the statement that Geno Smith said, like they wrote me off, but I didn't write back, was pretty cool. Um, just in the post game stuff. It's really interesting to see. I'm anxious to see about the we didn't really talk about it too much. Lamar Jackson is still in contract talks for next season, obviously, because this is the end of his contract. And then you see Dak Prescott, who had gotten injured and then signed a contract, a big contract. It's just interesting to see if our team's gonna start looking at that a little bit more, like these guys that are getting hurt. Because Lamar Jackson did get hurt, what was it, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
So it'll just be I'm more interested in, like, the money aspect of, like, what the guys like, because it just seems like there's blank checks being written for these guys that don't seem like they should be getting that much, but I guess their stats may say otherwise. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, I try not to judge too harshly on Week One just because there's so many unknowns. There's so many teams that in the preseason they hardly let their stars play together that much, and so it does definitely take a while to get a rhythm. And then you have injuries that pop up too. We've already seen a few guys that are going to be out for a serious amount of time. TJ Watt is going to miss a few weeks now. Luckily, he doesn't need surgery, so he's not going to be out for the full season. So that's good news for Steelers fans. Dak Prescott is going to be out for 6 weeks now. And so week one is just a complete crapshoot. But going forward, I week two, I think we're going to definitely get a little bit better of an understanding of where teams are sitting in across the NFL as a whole. I think it's obvious the Bills and the Chiefs are 1 and 2 in the AFC right now. We thought the Rams would be number one. Was week one a fluke, or are they really going to be that bad this year? Is the NFC West as a whole going to be that bad this year? We see here the top two projected teams scored 31 points. The 49ers scored 10, so that gives you 51 points. 68 points the entire division scored. So that's not great news looking at that. But like I said, it's so hard to judge teams in week one, especially from I don't even know what I'm going to say there, but I'm
Well,
just
quick
trying not.
question, just
Yeah.
without judging week 1, just based on players, Josh Allen had a really good game, but threw, I think, 2 picks, but then you have Patrick Mahomes who maybe didn't have, as many passes as Allen, but still was able to go with the 1 touchdown pass and 0 interceptions. Just as an early thought, do you think one of them is a better favorite for MVP just off week 1, obviously?
So Mahomes actually threw more passes. He had 5 touchdowns.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
So he had a
Um.
better passer rating?
Yeah. Um. So I think the caliber of defense that the Bills brought definitely lends itself to you could argue more. Um, but I think heading into week two, the Bills play the Titans, which I would argue has a better defense than the Rams. I mean, you could say all you want about the secondary with especially with Jalen Ramsey. I think Jalen Ramsey's a little bit overrated. I'm not saying he's bad. He's one of the best corners in the league, but he's definitely not, the cream of the crop like everybody treats him to be. We saw in the playoffs last year multiple times he got burnt giving up touchdowns. This past week against the Bills, Stephon Diggs burned him a few times. He had one pass deflection, and it was like a shitty pass by Josh Allen.
Mhm.
And he was talking shit. I'm like, all right. And then like I think
I
it was
think
the
it's
very
more out
next.
of a respect for who he was when he played for the Seahawks, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't
Uh,
think that like you said, I don't think that he is, like, this godly player, like it seems like people are like, "Oh, he's the best at the position," or something, you know?
that was Sherman, by the way. Ramsey played for the
Oh,
Giants.
yeah, shit, sorry.
Get it together, god
Jesus.
damn.
Same
But
position.
yeah, but I feel like he is Richard Sherman 2.0. Like, yeah, he can be really good in some situations, but he's not the best. And I think he'll make a great play here and there, and everybody's like, oh, yep, we're gonna put your name at the top of this list, and you're the best. I don't see him as that, but I mean that again, that's just my opinion. Moving on, it is time to give you our week two preview. Real quick before we do move on, our game pick standings in the NFL after week one. Slade goes a whopping 2-5. Uh,
I
Nick
don't
goes
watch
four
the
and
NFL.
Nick goes 4-3, and I lead the way at 5-2. It was a really good weekend for me picking this week. Uh,
Mhm.
but we'll
Caught
jump
up
on.
in college too then.
Yeah. But it is time for our week two picks. And we're get right into it here. The very first game up, we have on Thursday night, the Chargers visit the Chiefs. This will be 8:15. This is going to be on Prime Video on Amazon. They're not doing CBS, NBC, anything like that. It is strictly on Prime Video this year. Kansas City opens as a 4-point favorite. The over/under is set at 54. With Nick not here, we'll go ahead and get his pick first, and he takes the Chiefs. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going with the Chiefs also. I think that Patrick Mahomes is really gonna have a good year.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be a shootout. I said this a couple times last week, and I turned out to be wrong, but I definitely feel like it's gonna be a shootout. Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes can sling the ball around. It's gonna come down to whose defense can play better. I think the Chargers defense plays a little bit better. I think their front seven is one of the best in the league.
Has
And so I'm
nothing to do with him playing for Oregon.
No, not at all. But I think the Chargers get it done on the road. But a great early season matchup, especially on a Thursday night, for one of the toughest divisions in the NFL. I think it's gonna be a great game. Moving on, we go to our Sunday games. Miami visiting Baltimore on 1 p.m. This will be on CBS. Baltimore opens as a 3.5 point favorite. The over/under is set at 44.5. Nick, goes with Miami, which I thought was a little shocking, but I guess he loves Tua, but I don't.
Mhm.
Oh, well, I already gave your pick away, but you took the Ravens.
Yeah, I think that Lamar Jackson is really gonna try and perform well this year just because he is in contract talks for next season. So I think he's gonna really set himself up nicely for that.
Yeah. And just real quick, just shout out Jesse. I love your little beer koozie I got at the wedding. I go with the Ravens as well. This M&T Bank is a very underrated um, atmosphere, I guess is the way you would put it. And I think this offense is going to be one of the best if they can stay healthy. One of the best in the NFL, especially with J.K. Dobbins back from injury. They definitely showed spurts of greatness against the Jets, but they also showed where they need to improve. I think with a week of practice, a week of game film, I just don't see enough from the Dolphins outside of Tua throwing to Tyreek for me to say, "Yep, this is a team ready to take that next step, especially on the defensive side of the ball." So I'm going to take the Ravens at home. Next up, we have the Patriots visiting the Steelers. This will be Sunday on CBS at 1 p.m. as well. New England opens as a 1.5 favorite. The over/under is set at 40.5. The key news for this is Mac Jones will be out of the game. But Nick's pick, and he goes with the Steelers. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm interested to see if the over under or I mean the spread changed at all with that Matt Jones news. I'm also gonna go with Nick and pick the Steelers though.
Yeah. I looked at it right before we went on when I made all this stuff, and
Hmm.
that's what the spread was. So, yeah, it'll be curious to
Oh, I
see.
believe you. I'm just
Yeah,
saying that you would think after a day or so, people are gonna start hammering the Steelers and they're gonna change that.
yeah, I should probably get my bets in before. I also go with the Steelers here as well. I believe in Mitch. Mitch is a great QB. He led them to a win against Cincinnati. He looked decent. He's not an overly flashy QB. He's not a Mahomes. He's not a Justin Herbert, but he's a quarterback that can go in there and get the job done. And I think the Steelers start 2-0 to start the season. Moving on, another divisional game. We have the Buccaneers visiting the Saints. This will be 1 p.m. on Fox. Tampa Bay opens as a 2.5 point favorite. The over under is set at 44. Nick goes with the Saints at home. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going with the Bucks. I think that Tom Brady's gonna be able to get his offense moving this week. I'm interested to see what you think just based on how you talked about their offense from this past week.
Yeah, I'm going with the Saints. I think Jameis Winston is a great QB. I think this will be a surprising team for the first 2 weeks, and then we've seen it before. They're good, and then either Jameis will get hurt or this offense will just fall flat on their face. But with Jameis throwing the Chris Olave, I think this offense is a little bit too much for the Bucks defense. And again, I don't see enough out of that Bucks offense. Again, it was just week one. Brady didn't play the whole preseason, so again, it could have just been a fluke. But until the Bucks prove to me that they have a really potent offense, I just don't see enough for them for me to take them over the Saints. If they played the Falcons or they played the Panthers, I would definitely take the Bucks there, but I just don't see enough there yet.
Did you
Um,
see Jameis's post game presser with the talking about his pain?
I did not know.
So they asked him what his thoughts were on the game, and he said, we just had a hard fought game. Like we really stuck it out and got the win. I was in a lot of pain." And they go to ask him, they say, "Where was the pain?" And he just looks at the camera and said, "The pain was everywhere." Like, I think that's his way of not giving out that, like, he was hurting a specific spot, but it was
Yeah,
just funny because it was, like, almost like Mike Tyson-esque when he says, like,
my
"Where was the
back.
pain?" He's like, "Spinal."
And then real quick, I just did look up Mac Jones' injury. He's not 100% ruled out for this weekend. He is doubtful though. They will wait and see how he's feeling. I guess it'll be a game time decision. Um, Moving on, when we put this game down, when we talked about it on Sunday, looking ahead, we thought, oh yeah, this is gonna be a great game. Dak Prescott gets injured. I think all of us are on the same wagon here. But yeah, the Bengals visiting the Cowboys. This will kick off the 4 o'clock slate of games on CBS. Cincinnati opens as a touchdown favorite. The over/under is at 41.5. Nick goes with the Bengals. Slade, who do you have?
Yeah, I think with the Dak news, I think that the Bengals are gonna easily be able to get at least a touchdown win here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Bengals as well. I think their offense, and especially the wide receivers, is going to be way too much for the Dallas secondary alone. And with Dallas not having an offense outside of Zeke, I don't see this going very well for them this weekend. Uh, Next up, we have the Bears visiting the Packers. This will be the Sunday night game on NBC. Green Bay opens as a 10-point favorite. The over/under is set at 42. Um, Nick takes Green Bay here, which isn't surprising. Slade, who do you have?
Yeah, I'm going the same. Uh, I think it's more or less. I think Green Bay didn't play very well last week. I think that this is actually going to be a pretty close game. I think the 10-point spread is ridiculous at this point, but I just did it to be opposite of what you were going to
Yeah.
pick.
Um, I definitely agree with the 10-point spread being a little much. I think this is going to be a very close game. These games between these two teams always are, no matter how good or bad the other team is. It always comes down to the wire. You get that in rivalry games, whether it's college, NFL, whatever it may be. It's going to be a close, hard fought game. I'm super excited for it. Uh, I just don't believe enough in the Bears yet. Yeah, we got a week one
Wow.
win. Yeah, it was against a team that, you could argue it has a chance to win the NFC West. I think Trey Lance just wasn't ready for the moment. You could argue the elements were involved, whatever. Um, but I have learned before to not have hope in this team, and I'm not going to start now just because we won week one. I still think we're only going to win 5 game stops, and I don't think we're going to win at Green Bay week two. I think
I'm calling bullshit. I think
that's
that
some.
you wanted us all 3 to vote for the Packers so that we jinx the Packers and the Bears win,
No, I
because
swear
that's how it
I
works.
think no, I think Rodgers is gonna come out pissed off this week.
Oh, yeah.
He's gonna be a little upset, and I think at home it's just gonna be too much for the Bears. Um, so yeah, I honestly am picking the Packers here.
Honorable.
Yeah. Um, moving on to the first of two Monday night games, we have the Titans visiting the Bills. This will be at 7:15 on ESPN. Buffalo opens as a 10-point favorite. The over/under is set at 49. Again, I think I know who we're all picking here. Nick takes the Bills. Slade, who do you have?
Yeah, I'm going with the same. I think Josh Allen is gonna be on a tear this season. I think he's got the offense, and, yeah, I think it's gonna be a fun game.
Yeah. I'm going with the Bills at home as well. I think Ryan Tannehill is finally just showing how trash he is. I give it 2 more weeks, and I think Malik Willis is in at QB. Um, that offense did not look good at all. Derrick Henry didn't look that good. Uh, so I said this before the season. I think Derrick Henry's shelf life is coming close to expiring. Whether it's just the teams are figuring out how to scheme against him, or his production is just going to decline. So I'm not excited for his season going forward. And he might prove us wrong. We'll have to wait and see. But so all of us are taking the Bills at home. And the final Monday night game, we have the Vikings visiting the Eagles. This definitely has potential to be game of the week. The Eagles game against the Lions last week turned out to be super exciting. 38-35. I couldn't believe the Lions scored that many points. Um, but so this will be Monday night on 8:30 p.m. on ABC. Philly opens as a 2.5 point favorite. The over under is set at 50.5. Nick takes the Vikings. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going Vikings also. I think that they're gonna be able to really grind this one out and get the win.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Eagles at home. I think just from what I saw from that offense in Week One, they definitely have the potential to be one of the best teams in the NFC this year. A lot of people are putting money on them to win the Super Bowl. I'm not doing that yet. I don't think they're quite that good. But I mean, we've seen some of the heavy favorites in the NFC already stumble this year. But again, it was Week One. They definitely need to clean up the defensive side of the ball. You can't give up 35 points to the Lions. But I think the Lions have just undergone that much turnover the past year. Um, they could threaten for the NFC North, especially if the Packers continue to struggle. Um, but I think this is a high scoring game. But what it came down to for me is it's a primetime game with Kirk Cousins involved. So I just have him losing. Um, and so that will be our 8 games that we pick for week two. Um, and super excited for that. So that wraps up our NFL. We're going to shift over to college football now and review week two. Uh, Way more exciting than week one was. And I said this to Nick the other day. Like, I thought week one was exciting. I think we were texting in the group chat, like, this
Mhm.
turned out. But I mean, this is what college football is all about. So we're going to go over the games that we picked on our Saturday morning show. If you guys want to follow along with those picks, make sure you tune in 8 a.m. Every Saturday on our YouTube channel. If we are looking for guest pickers, we had our first guest picker this past weekend. And so if you are interested in doing that and joining us, shoot us a DM or comment on our YouTube if you want to join and be a guest picker. We would love to have you on. Um, but here are the 10 games we picked. First up, we had South Carolina visiting Arkansas. This game was a little bit closer than what the scoreboard says. Arkansas just jumped out early to a good lead. Spencer Rattler tried to fight back and claw South Carolina back into that game. It was just too much too early. Arkansas gets a big win, 44-30 at home. Nick had this as his upset of the week. I called it from the beginning. It wasn't going to be. We had Wake Forest beating Vanderbilt 45-25. Sam Hartman returned. I talked a lot about this on Saturday. I was super excited to see him back. He goes 18 of 27 for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Uh, Definitely some things he needs to clean up, but he looked really, really good for his first game back. I'm super excited to see how he does this season. Game of the week, and we'll talk about it a little bit more here in a minute. Alabama visiting Texas. It goes down to the wire. Alabama squeaks out a last-second win, 20-19 over Texas. Uh, Mizzou and Kansas State renewing their Big 12 rivalry game. Kansas State just throttles them 40-12, and Wisconsin getting upset at home. And I called this uh, by Washington State 17-14. So before we go to the next 5 games slate, just your thoughts on any of the games here. And I know you want to talk about Texas.
I just want to say that had Texas won, I would have won a lot of money because they were they were I mean, Alabama was favored to win by 20.5, I think. I
Yeah.
think that we had talked about, Jesse was like, um I was watching your guys' Saturday show while I was at work, and, I was messaging back and forth with Jesse, and he was like, "Texas is not back, like, they're gonna lose or whatever," and I was like, "Hey, they gave him 20 points," like, I mean, I didn't think that it was gonna be this close, obviously, but it was interesting to see that with their backup quarterback, they were able to still keep it close, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a huge testament to their defense uh, and just how underprepared Alabama was. I mean, everybody talks a lot about how they hardly ever schedule road non-conference games, and hey, this is why they go into a hostile environment, they can't handle it. I would argue against that. They play plenty of road games in the SEC, and yeah, I mean they struggle on the road there as well. We saw this from this team last year. Is they for some reason just seem to get off to sluggish starts, and they did not play as up to a national championship capability on this past weekend. Um, is it concerning going forward? Not really for me. I think their schedule ahead gets much, much easier. Even their SEC schedule, for me, the biggest question marks are Ole Miss and Tennessee. Outside of that, we saw Texas A&M stumble this past week. I don't think that's enough of a threat to them, but we'll have to wait and see. As far as Texas being back, they're not. And the
Do
reason I'm
you
saying
Sorry,
Yeah,
go.
the reason I'm saying they're not is one, Quinn Ewers is now out 4 to 6 weeks. But for me, we have seen this in so many years past where they'll either get a big upset win to start the year or they'll play a team really close like this, and then they'll go on to struggle from there. Last year, they were 4-0. They walked into the Oklahoma game. They were winning that Oklahoma game by 3 scores. Oklahoma comes back and beats them. They only won one game the rest of the year. Um, am I saying that's what's going to happen this year? No, I think they're definitely going to play a lot better this year. They're going to have a better record, um, but they're not back to competing for a college football playoff spot in my eyes. I need to see consistent growth out of them before I go. Okay, Texas is back. Um, what were you going to say?
At any point during that game, did you even think about the fact that if they beat Alabama, like, uh, and just the rest of their season that you were possibly, like, getting closer to that tattoo? Or no?
It might have crossed my mind a few times. Um, But I mean, the big thing with Ewers, so like you just said, he's out 4 to 6 weeks. The next
Mhm.
4 to 6 weeks are not easy for Texas. They get UTSA at home. UTSA is a great program. Uh, you know that could be trouble, especially with the backup QB. They go to Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a very very good team. They play a very tough NC State team this week. If they can pull off that upset, they're gonna have a lot of momentum going into that Texas game. So Texas could be in trouble there. They get West Virginia at home. West Virginia has a very good offense, but their defense is very bad. As we saw, they just lost to Pitt and Kansas back to back. And then they get the Red River rivalry on the fourth week. And if Quinn Ewers is not back for that could be disastrous for them, depending on how Card is playing. He stepped into that game on Saturday, went 14 to 22 for 158 yards. So I mean, you're a Division I quarterback, and you got recruited to go to Texas. Like you're not terrible, but you're definitely not the best of the best.
Mhm.
Um, if he misses week 5, that'll or excuse me, the 5th week, that's Iowa State at home. Um, I don't think this Iowa State is the team that went to the Fiesta Bowl 2 years ago, but they're still a very good team. They like to pull off a lot of upsets, especially on the road in the Big 10, or excuse me, the Big 12. And if he is out for the 6th week, he will miss the Oklahoma State game, which is at Oklahoma State. And so there's a lot of very tough games in that stretch there. That if he misses them, it could be big trouble for Texas. Um, the 7th week then is their bye week. So, I mean, I understand they want him back. Depending on how Card is playing, they might try and rush him back. But if Card's playing really well, if they're still winning games, I could definitely see them sitting. Depending on how bad his injury is, they could definitely sit Ewers until the bye week and go from there. But we shall wait and see. But yeah, I thought it was
It's in
very
his non-throwing arm, so I
yeah.
think that, like you said, there is a good possibility that if the backup's not playing well, that they could rush him back for 2 weeks prior to the bye week,
Mhm.
have him play for 2 weeks at, like, a 90% level, and then
Right.
have a week off again.
Yeah. Um, but the other thing outside of that is just how bad the officiating was. I mean, yeah, it definitely favored Alabama a little bit more, but there was missed calls against Texas as well
Mhm.
across the board. I just thought the officiating was terrible left and right. I mean, everybody points to the missed safety or intentional grounding or roughing the passer, whatever you want to call it, that happened in the end zone. Um, yeah, that was a messed up call, but from every direction. But there was tons and tons. There was a missed holding call on Alabama's touchdown drive there towards the end. Um, but yeah, I would say that the refing definitely favored Alabama a little bit, but they tried their best to balance it by missing a few calls for Texas as well. Moving on to the next set of games here, uh, Tennessee and Pitt had an instant classic game, 34-27 in overtime. Uh, Keaton Slovis had to go out and right before the first half ended. Did not come back for the second half. They have not announced um, if he's going to miss this week or what's going on. They haven't even said what his injury was. Their backup QB came in and he got hurt in the beginning of the fourth quarter, but he stuck it out and limped around the rest of the game. So you love to see that in college football. But huge win for Tennessee. Definitely stings for Pitt. They were up. I think I want to say it was 2 scores early, and Tennessee just fought back and was able to pull off the win there. Iowa State and Iowa in one of the worst football games ever. Granted, I'll give it to him. It was a torrential downpour. My favorite part was when they cut to Kirk Ferentz standing on the sideline, and he's in a white polo that you can completely see through. Um, but Iowa State gets a big win, 10-7 over Iowa. Uh, it's time to fire Brian Ferentz. We said this last week, but it was week 1. If Kirk Ferentz doesn't do something soon, his job might be on the hot seat as well. But we shall wait and see. Kentucky over Florida, 26-16. Florida talked a lot of shit, and I said it last week before the game. They were ranked too high too soon. Yeah, I understood they upset a number 7 team, or I believe it's number 7. They deserve to be ranked. They did not deserve to be ranked above 15. But here they were. They were ranked 12th, and they lose to a 21st ranked Kentucky.
You
Uh,
had a really good week last week of calls.
I did. Yeah.
It's gonna be hard to keep that up, because you
Oh,
had, like,
absolutely.
multiple games where you had said, and it ended up, coming true.
Yeah. But yeah, I I've never understood a team like if they would have upset Alabama or something. Yeah, hey, put them in the top 10 even. It was a number 7 team. It was week 1. You were at home. It wasn't even a road win. Yeah, you deserve to be ranked. 12 was way too high. And we saw that backfire. Arizona State loses on the road to Oklahoma State 34-17. And you could argue game of the week. It was our game of the week. BYU and Baylor go to double overtime and cost me 2,000 goddamn dollars. Um, BYU picks up the 26-20 win in double overtime. The kickers just did not want to make a field goal. BYU's kicker missed 2 field goals late, and Baylor's kicker missed a field goal in overtime. Um, just your thoughts on these games, Slade?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure I went 3-7 this week in college football, so it was a rough week for me. Um, I also had Arizona State covering the 11.5 favor that Oklahoma State went into the game with, and I mean, I think that the score looks closer than what the actual game was based on what I got to watch before going to bed. Um, I was really surprised with the BYU Baylor game. I mean, I know, uh I believe Nick picked BYU and you and I picked Baylor, but
Yeah.
I just didn't see it going to
No,
double overtime like that.
we all picked Baylor.
Oh, did
No,
we?
I didn't either. I thought Baylor's offense would be a lot better. And just a word of advice to anybody out there listening: if you have a 10-leg parlay, okay, and you're getting ready to go to bed, and the last game is a 10:15 night game that kicks off, and you need Baylor to win, and when you go to bed, they are losing, cash out your goddamn parlay. I was 9-0 up until that point. I fell asleep because
Did
I
you
was so
even look to see what the cash out would have looked like?
no, I did because I
Oh,
completely forgot that I
yeah,
could
yeah.
cash it out. But just future reference for anybody, if you've hit 9 out of 10 legs on a parlay, that last leg will not hit. You need to cash out. I didn't learn. Um, but yeah, no, Baylor's offense just could not get anything going. Blake Shippen, who we thought could really power this team to being a clear playoff contender, just did not happen. Um, BYU gave up 137 yards in the air and 152 rushing yards. That is a scary good defense. They were feeding off the energy of that crowd, and they did just enough to keep Baylor at bay. To the Tennessee game, real quick. So Tennessee and Pitt had 831 yards of total offense combined, which is not indicative of a 34-27 game. Usually, when you see numbers like that, it's up and higher than that. Um, Tennessee definitely needs to improve their rush defense. So if they want a chance to contend in the SEC East, Pitt was gashing them left and right with runs. So when you get to Georgia and Kentucky and especially Alabama games like that, you can't let them run the ball all over you. Otherwise, you're doomed from the get go. But like we just said, Keaton Slovis left the game. It's not clear if he's going to play this weekend. They play at Western Michigan. It could definitely be a good opportunity to rest him, but we shall wait and see. But yeah, week 2 of college football was a lot of fun to watch. It'll make week 3 even more exciting. We have a lot of great games. We've already had the 10 that we're going to pick. So if you want to see that, make sure you tune in Saturday morning, 8 a.m. on our YouTube. Um, our updated standings for game picks and our cash out section in college football. We are all tied at 17 and 10 after this past week. Uh, Slade, you went 5-5.
Oh, did I?
Nick goes 6-4, and I went 9-1. Again, if you go to bed before your bets are done, just cash out. Um, as far as cash out, our standings there, I believe we all went 1-1 again. Actually, you went 0-3.
Mhm.
So Nick sits at 9-5. I sit at 6-8, and Slade sits at 5-10. Before we let you guys go, we're gonna give you the updated top 25 and discuss it here a little bit. So Oregon slides into the top 25 at 25th. Texas A&M drops to 24th. Pittsburgh drops to 23rd. Penn State gets into the rankings. They jump up to 22nd. Texas gets put in the rankings after losing. They go up to 21st. Ole Miss sits at 20th. Wake Forest 19th. Florida drops to 18th. Baylor 17th. North Carolina State is at 16th. Tennessee jumps up to 15th. Utah sits at 14th. Miami sits at 13th. BYU jumps all the way up to 12th, giving us a top 25 matchup with them visiting Oregon this weekend. Michigan State sits at 11th. Arkansas sits at 10th. Kentucky at 9th. Oklahoma State at 8th. USC at 7th. Um, Oklahoma at 6, Clemson at 5, Michigan 4, Ohio State 3, Alabama 2, and Georgia 1. Obviously, the big missing team there was Notre Dame dropping from 8th all the way down to unranked. Slade, just your thoughts on the updated top 25 here.
Yeah, I think that Alabama's gonna have to start running away with games against teams like Texas if they expect to stay in that top 3 talk. The only other thing that I would say, I mean, 2 things, I guess, like you had said, that's gonna be a really good top 25 matchup this weekend. Um, and then I think that Penn State, being a Penn State fan, I think they're ranked too early. I would see them at, like, the 27th-ish and use that as, like, motivation. I mean, if they get a win against Auburn and everyone else kinda stays the same with their quality this weekend, then I could see them being around, like, the 22 or something like that.
Mhm.
But, personally, I just think that they're ranked too early based on the teams that they've played so far.
Yeah, I'm an Oregon fan. I think Oregon's ranked too early after we were 10th. We lost to number one. We got blown out. I think that's the reason we got put back in the rankings is like,
Mhm.
hey, you lost to a ranked team, but now they're ranked number one, and we see how good they are. Um, I would argue Marshall deserved to be ranked. I would argue App State deserved to be ranked over us. Marshall beat a number 8 team. App State beat the number 6 team. Yeah, App State has a loss, and I understand that, but that loss was a very close loss after scoring 40 points in the fourth quarter. You got destroyed on an onside kick, and you gave up a touchdown. You didn't quit. You went right back down and scored, and you were a 2-point conversion away from setting it to overtime. But at the very least, I would put one of those teams over Oregon, just because, like I said, I'm an Oregon fan. I love the fact that we're ranked. But hey, now we have a very good BYU team visiting. Let us beat them and then put us in the rankings. Again, I would argue App State or Marshall deserve to be in the rankings ahead of us. But uh,
Or
that's
over
just what
Pitt. I mean,
Pitt.
Pitt lost this last weekend. They had a good game. I will give it that, that it was a
Yeah,
really good game. But then they also their win is against West Virginia, which it was another close game like that, you know?
yeah. Uh, the reason I can see them leaving Pitt in, even though yeah they lost a close game, is I feel like when they sat down, they did these rankings like, hey, it was close, but we also understand they just lost their starting QB for the first half, and they were still able to stay in it. I think a lot of people thought when they came out in the second half and Slovis was not dressed, I thought a lot of people went, okay, Tennessee's just going to throttle them. Their defense kept them in it. That QB, I forget his name. I want to say it's like Pita. Um, Stepped up and played really well, and then he got injured, and he continued to play through the game-tying touchdown pass right at the end of the fourth quarter there to force overtime. Uh, so I feel like in the rankers' eyes, they sat there and went, "Okay, yeah, we'll cut them some slack." Now, if they lose to Western Michigan, yeah, there's there's gonna be some questions there.
Mhm.
Um, but overall, it's I hate early season rankings because you had the preseason where we had Oregon at 10, they got throttled, they got dropped out, and all of a sudden everybody's like, "Oh, maybe it wasn't that bad," and now they put them back in.
Mhm.
There's a lot of teams that deserve to be ranked that aren't. A lot of undefeated teams that I try to not get wrapped up in the AP poll too much, just because I feel like year in year out it's just a crock of shit. But um, yeah, I mean we'll have to wait and see. We're gonna talk more about this on Saturday. It'll just be Slade and I on Saturday again. Um, Slade, unless you have a top five.
So I kinda it's more of a top 3. Looking at this week's games, the ones we went over, what are your top 3 games that you're looking forward to watching just based on I mean, I kinda know the one, but what are your other 2 that you're excited about?
In college?
No, NFL. I figure we'll talk
Oh,
NFL
NFL.
more on
Oh, okay.
Saturday, yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
I
no,
should have
that's fine.
clarified.
Yeah, but it's okay. Yeah, no, the one is definitely the Green Bay Chicago game. It'll be interesting to see where the pecking order will sit after that. With Green Bay coming off a loss to Minnesota, you could argue it was a surprise win by Chicago over San Francisco, but again, there were so many outside factors in that game, the weather, and so on. You're going to go into a unless something crazy happens in Lambeau, uh, a 100% neutral game outside of yeah, you're playing in Lambeau. So I'm excited to see that just from a football perspective, not even the fact that I'm a Bears fan. The next game I'm excited for is New England at Pittsburgh. If Mac Jones plays, we're going to get to see if Pittsburgh is really going to be a contender for a playoff spot this year. I'm very excited to see that. And the third game, it's very hard for me to decide this. Because there's a lot of really good games on the slate this year or this week. There's also like a lot of we have the Bills Titans. Like, yeah, it's two playoff teams
Yeah.
from last year, but I don't think by any means two good playoff teams or one of them you could argue.
I'm
The other
completely
one,
in agreement with your first 2, and my 3rd is Vikings Eagles, which you had already voiced a lot of reasons as to why that's a must-see game, but what were you gonna say?
that's definitely a good one. The other one I would put in there then would be the Saints Buccaneers. Uh, are the Buccaneers going to show that their offense really does have potential, or are they kind of going to continue to sputter along until Tom Brady finds his groove from missing all the preseason? Um, and can Jameis Winston keep up his performance that we saw in Week 1? He looked really really good, and we saw it last year. He looked pretty good through the first couple games, and then he started to falter, and then he got hurt. Can he stay healthy? Can he stay productive? Because if he can, this Saints team is definitely one that can win the NFC South. So I mean, there is a lot of good football on this weekend, and I get the cool part about the NFL versus college is I guess it's the same as college, but every week can go in and anybody can lose to anybody. It doesn't matter. Uh, the Bills could go play the Jaguars and they can lose, just like we saw last year. Um, so on paper, there's a lot of boring matchups. I guess I would say this week, and I think it's more so just because of the results we saw out of Week 1, with so many question marks around so many teams still left. But week 2 is where they kind of start to lay out like, okay, this is the pecking order of the NFL going forward. So it's exciting, but at the same time, it's just so hard to tell. Like, yeah, this is gonna be a really good game. Like, I don't think anybody had Houston and Indianapolis going to overtime and ending in a tie last week. So it's the duality of early season NFL games. But that will do it for our show this week. We thank you so much for checking us out. We really appreciate you being here. As always, please go follow our socials uh, at Jack Wagon Sports on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all of it. Please go show us some love over there. We would really appreciate it. We will see you Saturday morning. It'll be just be Slade and I, and we'll try and find a guest
Gonna
picker
be
for Sunday.
electric.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun. It's something we really enjoy doing. We're glad we finally were able to do it. We're working on bringing you live streamed games. All three of us sitting down watching the football game, and you guys joining us there. So once we have that ready, we'll bring that to you as well. But make sure you join us Saturday for Out of the Tunnel live on our YouTube channel, 8 a.m. And go back check out some of the other episodes, and we will see you guys next week on the Jack Wagon Sports Podcast.